Hi Ninjas, welcome to another instalment of the Lee and Paul Show, where we are talking to you about all things HR information systems and how to how to select and implement your HR system in the best possible manner. A couple of weeks ago, we covered the beauty parade, getting the demos from your vendors. And at that point, our process kind of split into the internal process and the external selecting your vendor process. So last week, we covered the first stage on the internal process, which was around defining your organizational structure, so that could be properly reflected in the system. This week we flick back across to the external stream and selecting your vendor, and we're going to talk about the RFP process. RFP, RFI, Lee, we're using them interchangeably. Which do you prefer?
RFP. So RFI is the formal name for the beauty parade. Really, it's
okay.
Trying to get a high level view of who you're going to bring into your RFP process. So yeah, we'll be down to hopefully 2 or 3 vendors by this point, and then we're going to get RFP from them, which is a request for proposal.
Yeah.
Where we get into the nuts and bolts.
Absolutely. And people probably don't know that I'm a veteran of 25 years as a salesman in the enterprise software space. So this is something that I'm familiar with. And when I was selling, there's nothing I like better than a customer that was taking a really relaxed approach and not really having a formal RFP, because I knew that I could just sell them on all of the flashy bits and not have to answer any difficult questions. But it's a really bad way of selecting a vendor. So hopefully this session will help people to put a bit of structure around that and make sure that they don't fall foul of that approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And the good news is we've done all our groundwork, right? So when we've looked at our people heat map at the very start of the process, that set us up for success. We know what the gaps are that we're trying to fill. We know what the business pain points are that we're trying to address. We've done our business case, so we know what the sort of return on investment is. So when we're talking numbers with our prospective vendors, we know what sort of return on investment that's going to give us, cost versus benefit and all those other kinds of stuff, all that heavy, horrible spreadsheety groundwork that we did at the start. This is the point where it really starts to make a difference and really add a lot of value to the process. So yeah, if I quickly share my screen, as ever, we've got some beautiful slides for you, and the odd bit of toolkit, more of template stuff this week for us to show you through. So if that looks like it's coming through okay. So generally, the slideware is there for people who haven't seen the video and want to dive straight in and see what's going on or catch up with the process. But essentially what we've got here is a quick sort of catch up on where we are in the process. Give my screen a second to catch up. We've looked at the sort of vendors out there. We've matched them to our heat map. We've probably, hopefully, got down to maybe 2 or 3 vendors that have really piqued our interest, and we want to get scratch the surface. And my favourite way of sort of articulating all of this is like when you buy a house. So the first time when you go around looking at houses, you'll probably find a few that you like. You go for a second viewing and you really get into the detail. Will my sofa and 3-piece suite look fine there? Will my TV look good on that wall? What's in the cupboards? Does the plumbing all take up all the cupboard under the sink? All the nitty gritty stuff that you really care about to live in it, rather than the stuff that immediately grabs your attention and goes, this is really, really promising for this particular property. They're absolutely the same for the vendors, right? You've done your RFP, you've seen the shiny, the thing that's really drawing you about that product, but now you really need to get into the nitty gritty and understand whether this is the product for you and for your business. And weirdly, what you're trying to get to is not, that's the one for me. a decision already, because remember, after this we've got commercial discussion, and if you've already decided that only that one product is the one that we're going for, you might as well be saying to the salesman, whatever price you've got, stick that. We don't need to do any negotiations. Give us your most expensive price and we'll stick to it. So you've got to be prepared to have a runner-up. You've got to be prepared to have a second choice, so that if you do feel like you're priced out by your first choice, you're comfortable with going with your second choice. Now, it's
a great point, that, Lee. Again, going back to my days, I think whenever I knew I was the only show in town, that the incentive to do a deal kind of went away. So smart purchasers always end up with a shortlist of at least two, and take it from there. It's good advice.
Thank you very much. So very good. So like I said, the idea here is to uncover the facts, and particularly you're looking for strengths and weaknesses, areas that potentially the vendors haven't shown you yet, things that got skirted over, things that got, oh yeah, I'll come back and we'll talk about that later, things that haven't really been, questions that really haven't been answered. So as I said in the beauty parade one, if you were making notes as you went through of things that you asked and you got a sideways answer, these are the kinds of things to really highlight in your RFP. So you want written responses that say, yes, this does this. You don't want a salesman just nodding along. Now, the world's moved on a little bit from your salesman that will just say yes to anything in order to get the sale, because we've got better at closing that loop, but there are still some of those guys around, right? So it's absolutely worth making sure that you get a written response, you video a session, whatever it is, so that questions and answers can be played back when it's part of the discussion post contract. Because once you've signed that contract, you're committed to the cost, and that contract is based on these facts that you're gathering now. So absolutely get into the things that you don't feel have been satisfied as you've gone through the process, and then ask each vendor all the same questions, obviously. So wherever, even if one vendor's answer that particular question pretty well, you're still going to ask the same questions of all these sort of 2 or 3 vendors that are left as we move along. So an RFP itself looks, there's so many different varieties of these. They're normally in a spreadsheet, sometimes in a Word document, something along those lines, but they'll involve mainly your business requirements is the sort of core part of them. It is the system must be able to do this, the system must be able to do that, and all that informed by the stuff that we sort of did earlier on in the walkthrough. But the RFP itself has a process that sits around that. So you're also judging your vendor on how well they follow the process. These are partners that you're going to work with for a minimum of 3 to 5 years, based on how long you're going to keep this system for. So how they respond to you during this procurement process is an indicator on how good a partner they're going to be. Is there a vendor-client relationship, or are they a partner relationship? Are they trying to work with you or for you? And those are one is not better than the other. One is right for your business and one isn't. You might want a very strict you give us your service and we pay you, and that's the extent of it. Or you might want someone who is really interested in, adjusting their development roadmap to help you with your business priorities, whatever the thing is that's right for you, right? So generally speaking, an RFP will follow a very strict timeline. We'll communicate to the 2 or 3 vendors up front, this is the timeline that we're expecting you to work to. You'll put your submission in by X date, and usually that they are quite strict. You'd say if your submission's late, then it'll be discounted. So normally, unless the business wants an extension for any one reason or another, you wouldn't expect that as a vendor. You'd expect the deadline to be the deadline. They're normally quite a lot of work for the vendors. So very often it's always nice to ask them if they want to participate first and foremost. You know, it might be that, you know, you as a client are maybe a little bit too big for them, or maybe a little bit too small for them, and they don't naturally fit in their normal sort of spaces. So they might not be able to offer you a good value deal based on the size of your organization. So ask them if they want to participate, invite them, and then give them the timeline, show them through, and then provide them with the document that they need to fill in. Which is normally pretty stuffy, if I'm honest. There's no real way of getting away from this. And you know, if you're procuring for a light touch system with you know, for a company of 50 to 100 people, a small RFP is you know, perfect to do the job. It's going to be pretty specific. It's going to have very detailed business requirements, but just based around that thing. If you're putting in an enterprise solution for a global bank or some such, this is going to be a massive document, and you're going to want to get industry help on this. You're going to want to bring in you know, an HR system specialist to help you put this together, make sure that your requirements are covering off, and guide you through the legal and procurement processes on both sides, because the contract negotiations just in themselves can stretch out for many months if the groundwork isn't done correctly in the first place. So definitely advise getting help if you haven't got a department in your organization that's there specifically to do procurement and that can guide you through that process themselves. And then this is the bit that I want to spend most of our time talking about. It's about how you choose. It's the evaluation criteria. So I've popped these in here, but I've got this on a separate piece. So this will pop out and sort of help articulate what I really want to talk about here. So these are not, again, written in stone. These are sort of from experience, the high level areas that you're going to want to consider as part of your evaluation. So first and foremost on here is opportunity. You know, so how does that organization perform? How will they perform going forwards? It's okay saying we can put in this system that does what you want today, but you don't know what you don't know about tomorrow. So how flexible is the solution going forward? What is a change going to look like? Some of these cross over, right? So if we do a piece of change in one system and there's a complex architecture that sits behind, so that's the jigsaw that joins all these systems together. Let's say you're looking at an HR solution that joins to a workforce management solution that also both talk to your engagement solution. You've got complex architecture starting to appear. A change in one system might mean a change in another system that also then feeds to a third system. So you're paying for changes in three places, whereas if you've got a full suite solution, a change in one place is a change across the board, generally speaking. So things like cost of change, roadmap alignment, flexibility and configurability are really important. And cost, obviously, is going to be a massive factor for every organization, especially at the moment where you know, every penny is really important. So when we talk about cost, I like to talk about total cost of ownership. Usually, but you need to bear in mind any write-off costs of systems that you've got at the moment. So things like dual licensing, projects that are in flight that may be canned because this new product does the thing that you've got a project going for. All of that kind of stuff needs to sit in there. And then on the business case sheet we sent out a while ago, we talked about ongoing SaaS and project implementation costs. Adding all that stuff, trying to really get your arms around every bit of cost that is going to be attached to that project, and then how that each vendor sort of scores on that front is really where opportunity sits. In the risk space, and you know, I hate to say it, although IT will tell you it's really important about user experience and that the product is fit for purpose and does everything it says on the tin, what they really care about is risk. So they don't want that product going live and then 2,000 calls hitting the help desk in the first week because the product's not stable or it hasn't behaved or the business change effort's wrong or whatever else. They don't want to be in a position where the company that provides that product's gone bust and now they've got a product that hasn't got any support. So risk is a massive piece for the IT team. They're going to call this out above and beyond anything else. Security, another good example, because nobody's going to come to the people team and say your HR system's been hacked. They're going to go, IT, why is our HR system being hacked? So all of these things sort of sit in the IT space, and they will shout loud. And we'll talk next time about navigating the procurement process with IT and legal and so on. But really, this is the space where they're going to shout loudest and say it's the most important thing. I'd say, however, it's really important to balance that risk with the risk of massive business change. So, IT will have less concern about business change because that's your bag. You need to deliver that business change as the HR team, as the system sponsor, etc. But if you pick a product that doesn't fit your current processes particularly strongly, that business change could be just as damaging as the supportability of the product or choosing a smaller supplier or whatever it might be. So all that risk needs to be weighed up. And then on the capability front, from your operations team and from your people team users, that's where what the system can do. That's where all your shiny bells and whistles sit, where your look and feel sits, where your mobility of the system sits. So is it mobile friendly? Is it mobile responsive? Can you look at it on different devices? Does it behave strangely if you look at it on a desktop? Because it's mobile first. All of those kinds of things need to be sort of in there. I think the important thing with these is when people are sitting down to do these evaluations, so normally I'd suggest someone very senior in each team is part of this evaluation, but also bring the relevant SMEs to the session. So you might have 4 or 5 IT people, you might have 6 or 7 HR people, you might have 8 or 10 operations people, because they're going to use it at different layers of the organization, and sort of getting that all together and providing the appropriate weightings. Get the leaders to agree these criteria first. You don't want to be coming to people and go, here's the scoring, and this is how we're now going to evaluate what you've scored later on down the line, because someone might disagree with the criteria that you put together. So first step is getting these criteria agreed, and you can see in the bottom section there we've put anything with a strong opportunity or something that's going to be massively going to sway the conversation. Potentially that bit of information is going to get presented to your executive team as reasons to take this product. So it's really important that you've got a backup in that's been articulated well to say why you've given that a 4, why you think that is the best of the best or the worst of the worst. So as we're going through this process, we're going to score all these. So I'm just going to give you a second before I flip onto the next screen. But does that all make sense?
It does make sense. It strikes me that, and tell me if I'm wrong, because it happens. It strikes me that some of this stuff we started to document back at the business case stage. So that's probably a good starting point for this.
Yeah.
But it kind of goes into the next level of detail.
Exactly.
But yeah, you've kind of got that document, so it's kind of then using that as a starting point and getting down into the detail of prioritizing some of this stuff. And some of it, particularly in the risk category, is going to be binary, right? It's GDPR compliance. It's a yes or a no. There's no scoring involved.
Indeed.
So it's just getting into that detail.
Yeah, but weirdly, some people will have their opinion, and that'll sway the yes or no and make it a 3 out of 4. And you'll be like,
right.
why is it a 3? You say, well, I'm not sure. I haven't seen it. It looks okay, but I haven't seen it. So you know, you're dealing with sentiment as well as, you know, fact within there, because you're getting a broad spectrum of people involved in the whole bit. But so yeah, and even when you come on to the next bit where you're doing your scoring and you're looking at that evaluation, you'll get there'll be individuals in that whole process where you go, well, actually, your opinion on this piece is more important than someone else's. Whereas over here, you know, security is a good example, right? Security, we have to pay attention to what IT say because they're the experts in that space. But usability of the system, actually, it's mainly the operations people that are going to be using the system. So if IT go, well, it's not very usable, but all the ops people go, well, yeah, we really, really love it, then you're going to pay more attention to the ops guys. Sure. So essentially what we end up with is this either a heat map, or, you know, this is one way to present the data. There's lots of different ways, but a heat map like this that gives you the scoring across these different areas, looking out for reds. So normally when I do it, a red is a big no-no. If you've got a red in any space, we shouldn't be looking at that vendor. So if it genuinely scored that low on any section, so normally you'd expect to see, because the vendors have got this far, mostly ambers and greens across the board. But, you know, this gives you a nice visual view of each vendor and how they've scored in each space, and top level, without any with any of that sentiment, where we think we've got to. And that's sort of joined up with a similar laid out heat map with comments that I talked about, where so when you're presenting this to a senior stakeholder that hasn't been involved in the process, it's really easy for them to help get involved and have a view on what's going on here. So, you know, it's a 10-minute pre-read for them before they go into the meeting to go, because if you're going to sign off a 2, 10, 20 million pound project, you're going to want to know that the right rigor has been applied, and this kind of layout really helps them with that. It helps them to understand where you've got to. It helps them assess the amount of rigor that's been put on, and it helps them go, well, it looks like vendor 2's the one, or vendor 3 is the one for us. So, you know, that information's there presented in a sensible way, and you can see the rigor that's gone into it just by sort of reading the sort of slide.
So sorry, Lee. I'm back on that slide. It's a little bit small on my screen. The words that are in those boxes, is that the vendors' RFP responses that have been dropped into there, or is that like an internal sort of dialogue?
Yeah, so generally this is commentary that will come back from your playback session. So normally you'd have your team sat in a room, you bring the vendors in for another sort of day's worth of presentations to follow up what they've done in the RFI, and you'd walk them through in detail. Usually provide them some business scenarios, rather than just do a broad demo. Don't show us what you've got. I want to see, you talked around transfers, but we never actually saw it. So show me this user story, show me this transfer A from transfer B, and that can make the demos a bit dry, but it answers the questions that you want to answer, and that's really important. So normally we'd have you know, a survey or you know, an opportunity for the guys who are attending from your side, tick off, score each sort of section, each user journey, whatever it is, and write some comments about it. And we'd normally cherry pick those comments, or pick out that, you know, they scored really high on this. The general feel of the comments that came back was this, so we pop in some of those comments along there. Or this particular comment was reflected in the same thing everybody else said. So generally it's that. In some spaces, it might be a piece of the RFP response, but normally we'd use the RFP response in a back corridor somewhere. You know, your HR consultant going through them with a fine-tooth comb, looking for things that they either want to see in the demo because they're not sure about, or really want are going to promote or demote this particular vendor. So it might be that in your user stories, the thing that you really want that is a really strong selling point doesn't come out. So going through the RFP, you almost have to set up that opportunity for the vendor to talk about that and make sure they get the opportunity to tell that, because even within your 5 or 6 people that are close to the project, you'll probably have different favorites. And you want to make sure all the positives and negatives get aired of each of the vendors, so that everyone can make a fair evaluation and they're not steered in a particular direction by what's being presented.
Sure.
Sorry, what we're asking to be presented. We absolutely want you to be steered on what's presented, right? That's the whole point. So then we get to a point at the end where we've got a recommendation. We're suggesting these areas are green, and normally we'd go to an exec team with a cost comparison and a view of what we expect it to be. And then at this stage again, we're pre-negotiation, right? So those costs will move, and it's really important to explain to any exec team members or whoever else that we're talking to that those costs will shift, but we'd only expect them to shift in one direction, right? Otherwise, we're not very good at negotiating, or we haven't given the vendor all the information. We've given them an opportunity to go, oh yeah, that's going to be more on top of that. You're adding scope or whatever else. So yeah, so that's the process in a nutshell. We'd get to that point, and then hopefully that'd give us enough information to start. Let me see if I can make. I'll tell you what. I'm just going to stop sharing so I can see your lovely face again. So that'd give us enough information to make a sort of informed decision on who to take to negotiations. It might be that you take all 3 to vendors to negotiation. It might be that you at that point then preclude one of them. I'd hope not 2 of them. You can do if you just keep the one vendor going. Obviously it's less time, effort and energy, because those negotiations are demanding for time. Contract negotiations in there. It's not an easy and straightforward process. It's there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of discussion to have, a lot of meetings, etc. So you might at that point have already decided and you just want to keep the one. If you do that, don't tell them.
That's the point. Exactly.
Is my advice. You don't let them know that, because the price is never going to move. If you do keep 2 going, which is clearly my recommendation from across this, you've got the opportunity to you could go back to them with the things that you think were strong and where you think they had opportunity, and see if they come back with more. And it might be a good bit of leverage, back to my house analogy, to get them to drop the price. So I really wanted this. The house hasn't got it. I think it's good value for money, but I'm not going to buy it at the cost it is because it hasn't got that thing that I really want. So again, going back to our heat map right at the beginning, good. You've shared that with them all the way through. They'll know where their shortfalls are at this point. You'll have given them that feedback. So a right time to start talking contracts, negotiating cost, and so on and so forth.
No, I think it's really good. I think a couple of observations from me. First of all, human nature is that we make decisions emotionally and then we justify them rationally. Yep. And that's really dangerous when you're buying software. Yep. Because you'll end up buying from the salesperson you like the best, or from the demo that looked the prettiest, or some combination of those factors, who came in when it was a sunny day outside. Yeah. And that's a disastrous way to buy software. So you have to find a way of overcoming that human nature to make the decision emotionally and put some objectivity into it. And I think this is really useful for doing that, and to get people to think objectively about what they want to achieve and which softwares might support that. And then secondly, it's that point about when vendors are selling to us, they're super keen and happy to answer all our questions, and falling over themselves. At some point though, you go into a paid piece of work, and all of those things become a cost. to the vendor potentially. So having a document to refer back to say, this is what I asked for, this is what you said you could provide, is absolutely critical and worth its weight in gold, I think.
Absolutely is. Yeah, no, absolutely it is. No, and hopefully we've got through the process. I know we sort of skipped over the content of the RFP itself and all the detail requirements. We're going to put an example on the site with these, so you can go and have a look at what an HR one looks like. But as I said, they're going to be fairly bespoke to you. They're going to have filled with your requirements, your non-functional requirements, which is one of my favorite things in the world. I popped a TikTok out on non-functional requirements. I don't know if you caught that one, but
I've not seen that one.
All right, well, I'll see if I can send that out again. But essentially, it's non-functional requirements are not things that the system does for you. They're just things about the system. So log on time, how long does it take me to get logged on? How long should a page take to refresh? When will the system be up? And it's probably the one of the most challenging conversations you'll ever have, because you need to be interested in it, and it's just not that interesting. So try and grab your IT guys and bring them in for that bit and see if they can support you and be in charge of non-functional requirements. So there'll be an example of an RFP on the site with these sort of two documents I've shown you already. It would be a bit dull for us to walk through them now, so let's not do that. But I think we've got an HR and a recruitment example. We can provide more if there's a pull from the ninjas and they want a different type. We can have a look at what else we can get out there for you.
Yeah, no, I think that's useful, and people will find just having an example useful. But if people have got specific questions, reach out to Lee, reach out to me via DM. We'll between us we'll work out a way of answering those. I'm super keen to get feedback from the ninjas on what they're finding useful, what they need more detail on. So I'm sure we can reach out and we can answer those questions.
Absolutely.
And I think you and I might be on the hook for a Q&A event at some point after Easter.
Yeah, someone did mention something along those lines. I'm excited to be live with the opportunity to ask off-the-cuff questions that I knew nothing about but walking in. So yeah, looking forward to that.
It'll be fun. We'll manage it between us. So yeah, look out for that, everybody, and do reach out. Anything else from you, Lee?
No, that's it. I hope you have a lovely weekend.
Yeah, you too, and have a great 10 days off over Easter. You're a lucky man.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, if we can keep the questions to a minimum, I'll.
Thanks very much. And I'll speak to you again soon. Thanks, Lee.
Bye now.
Bye, everyone.